The powerful Ekweremadu family had a problem money or power could not solve.
And we're not talking about a serial killer here now. We're talking about a man who has everything. He's achieved everything. His children have gone to the best schools that money can buy.
They didn't see anything wrong in the fact that Ekweremadu was in the Senate for almost 20 years. There is no hospital that is championed.
This practice is a form of modern slavery. It's exploitation because it's from people in a position of power. It may be that they have more money and they coerce or convince this other person, this poorer person, that they can do without their body parts.
This is a terribly sad story. It has been painted as one with heroes and villains, the clearly innocent and the morally guilty.
Ike Ekweremadu has not been known as a criminal anywhere in the country.
I was sad. I don't know if it's because I'm an empath, so I can always empathize with a perpetrator in terms of, God, why did you do that? Okay, you did it because of this, that, and the other. And we're not talking about a serial killer here now. We're talking about a man who has everything. He's achieved everything. His children have gone to the best schools that money can buy. Your only daughter, beautiful daughter, now has an issue with her kidney and you want to save her. Hello? If you get a driving license in the UK, you fill out the registration form or whatever it says. Do you want to donate your kidney if you're in a car accident or whatever, your heart or your brain? It's normal. People donate organs all the time. You just can't pay for it.
They didn't see anything wrong in the fact that Ekweremadu was in the Senate for almost 20 years. There is no hospital that is championed.
But it's a much more complex story than that, as the judge himself noted in convicting and sentencing the accused, calling Ike and Beatrice Ekweremadu persons of good character. It is therefore a story of several good people brought together in the most unfortunate circumstance because of a young woman who was seriously ill and at risk of death. Each of these parties began to fight for their very lives. There is so much the public was not told about this story. And today, we will unveil every strand. Well, thank you for joining us. Can you please identify yourself on camera and what you do?
Mark Lobel, I'm a freelance journalist. Humanitarian operation.
How did you get involved in Daniel's story?
I was involved because we were struck by this most incredible case. We'd never seen anything like it before in the UK. And the sheer bravery of this individual in bringing down such a powerful person meant that there was more to the story. And so we followed up the story once we'd heard about the conviction.
Right.
And we took it from there. Before this story, I had the pleasure of reporting and living in Nigeria before. So I was very familiar with the country and with the way things worked in Nigeria. And I was one of the aspects of this that most appealed to me was that I was going to get to go back to Nigeria and to meet people there. And it didn't disappoint. I was shocked by what I found in Nigeria. I was shocked by how the country had changed over the past 10 years. And I was shocked by what some people were prepared to do for their kidneys. Particularly one person I met there.
He was going to sell his kidneys for a laptop, I think.
That's right, yeah. We actually met the gentleman who owned the computer store, and he was selling second-hand computers, and someone had come up to him to explain that the money that he was going to give him for a laptop so that he could become a DJ and stop the manual work that he was doing had come from the fact that he had sold his kidney. He had gone on an organized trip to Egypt to sell his kidney, and he was going to use that money to give himself a better life. But the risks he had been taking to do that and the aftercare that he needed, and it sounded like he wasn't getting, was shocking.
In Lagos in 2022, a street trader called Daniel the first son of 9 children, left his village to come and hustle in Lagos with a view to bettering his life while ultimately hoping to travel abroad and play football. It's a lonely, scary life with no idea of what the future will bring. Daniel, whose real name cannot be reported for legal reasons in the United Kingdom, grew up in a big family in rural Nigeria without running water or electricity. Age 15, he was selling mobile phone accessories from a wheelbarrow in the city, sending home money to his family. Meanwhile, in Abuja, Nigeria, a dark, malevolent force was gathering. The powerful Ekweremadu family had a problem money or power could not solve. While Daniel pushed his barrow on one end of the Nigerian social ladder, Ekweremadu and his wife, Beatrice, a PhD holder, grew increasingly worried about their daughter's health. Ekweremadu was an incredibly powerful politician. He had run for governor. He had risen to the heights as Deputy Senate President. He was a lecturer, a visiting lecturer at a university in the United Kingdom. Some have called him a serial senator. In fact, his record was so unblemished that the only time anything ever happened to him was when he was pelted with stones and yams in Germany by protesters from his part of the country who thought he had inadequately supported the Biafra separatist movement.
What did they hope to achieve with that attack?
But even then, he had the upper hand. The assaulters were ultimately jailed by the German government. This time, Ekweremadu had a problem he couldn't solve. His daughter, Sonia Ekweremadu, appeared to have an ideal life, wealthy parents, but she was desperately sick and needed a kidney transplant. She had dropped out of postgraduate master's studies at the University of Newcastle in 2019 when she was diagnosed with a rare kidney disease, FSGS nephrotic syndrome. Her life had grounded to a halt. The family had battled to save her life, according to her, had taken her to various hospitals, but the illness continued and kept degenerating and was spending about £100,000 every year to keep her on dialysis and maintain her kidneys.
This practice is a form of modern slavery. It's exploitation because it's from people in a position of power. It may be that they have more money and they coerce or convince this other person, this poorer person, that they can do without their body parts. But it's actually much more complicated than that. One of the things that struck me was the man who ran the shop said that this guy came to him and he did not look well. And you know, one fears that the aftercare, which is very expensive and it's very complicated, wouldn't be happening. Where would he have got the money for the aftercare? Who would have been looking after him? You know, if the operation had taken place in Egypt, where would he have come back and got help in Nigeria? So many questions. It's illegal for a reason. The blood tests and all those things were being presented to Daniel as simply regular tests you need in order to get onto that plane to the UK for a better life.
Because today, the option of moving from a poorer country to a richer one is not just a dream for billions of people. It is an entirely realistic prospect.
Daniel said in court that when he and the Igbo woman were alone in the lift, she turned on them and she said to him, "Don't do it. Do you know what you're doing?" It stirred something in him. It rattled him. It rattled him so much that the final consultation came out and they said, "We're not going to do the kidney donation." And they didn't know about that conversation until court. They didn't know that this woman had sold them out.
I want to clarify a detail because most people have gotten this wrong, because the doctor said the kidney was not a match. Now most people assume match means something different. What we discovered, that match simply means that for any reason this operation can't go ahead. You know, could you explain that so people understand what happened?
What happened was that when Daniel went for his assessment, and they explained what was about to happen to him. They needed to be reassured, as they have to before carrying out any of these operations, that the person taking part understands the risks and is doing it in the right way, in a voluntary, altruistic way. And they were not convinced from his reactions that he was prepared to go ahead, even though he was a match, even though he had the right blood type. It was something that they could only tell by speaking to him. And in fact, a second doctor was brought in because they were suspicious. But despite coaching Daniel, or trying to coach Daniel to go along with their story, they could smell a rat.
When Daniel got back to the Obeta household,
And then suddenly, he was mistreated in the house. They were frustrated because the plan wasn't working. It sounds like they probably took it out on him, made him do chores. He was more confused.
he says that Dr. Obinna brought in a second doctor to start checking his body on the bed.
And then he heard a conversation that he was to be taken somewhere else for the operation to proceed.
So he's sleeping, it's at night. Dr. Obinna Obeta has brought this strange doctor in to feel his kidney, and he's like, okay, yeah. So Daniel testifies that he's now thinking, hey, nah, I'm not gonna have no botch job, like the way they do botch BBLs in the Dominican Republic that kills people. You know that, because you know there's back end so his fear was that they're just gonna cut me open, and that's why he ran away. So the Jakpa case, of course, you will see it and say Jakpa, but then if you read through the headlines, it was more than that. There were two critical parts. He was there. So we don't know if this Igbo doctor didn't have a change of heart, because she was paid, I think she was paid £1,500, the Igbo interpreter. If the Igbo interpreter hadn't said to Daniel when they were on their own, don't do it all, he could have answered the questions in the consultation just how he was briefed. So we don't know. Also, if Obinna Obeta hadn't brought that strange doctor at night to Daniel, he could have maybe stayed, because they could have said, well, okay, we can't do it at there. They can afford it. We'll go to another private hospital. But he was scared. And you can't blame him. You can't blame him for being scared of that.
At this point, he was aware of what the operation would be, and he ran away. And after 2 nights on the street, he made a very brave decision.